Now, there were some of the angriest scenes that I've ever seen in Parliament this week as MPs argued about the language used in political debate and shared stories of some of the abuse that they've received. And I have to say, it does make you think, why would anyone want to be an MP? Well, some of these women do. We're joined now by Nicola Lowry, the chair of Telford Conservative Association, Alicia Cairns, a Conservative activist, former candidate, and Laura Evans, who is the Conservative candidate for Wirral West. Thank you very much for being on the programme, nice and early on the first day of conference. I think we have to go to that first question. Why would anyone want to be an MP?
I think people feel really impassioned, particularly at this pivotal time, to stand up for their community. Firstly, to ensure that we do enact the referendum result of 2016, to ensure that we do uphold democracy. I know a lot of women locally and within the party, generally speaking, that want to ensure that we do stand up for conservative values, for aspirations. So I think it's really important, whilst it is a very critical and pivotal time, that we do ensure that we stand up for those values. So I can understand why people have concerns, but equally it's important that we do represent our views in Parliament.
I mean, is it a worry, though, when you look at some of those stories that MPs have shared, and it is MPs from all sides of the House, all sides of the Brexit debate, is it something that concerns you?
I think it's difficult because I imagine all three of us have faced it at different times. In the last election I was spat at, I was chased down the street, I received abuse. But I think it's quite a difficult one because I think when you want to step forward for public life, you're doing it because you genuinely believe you can make a difference and that it matters. And actually, there are people in other careers that get this as well. So when I worked for the NHS, I received death threats, me and my team, because we were trying to improve services and people didn't like the way we were proposing to do it. It isn't unique to
Do you think that the
MPs.
NHS would be, if you could choose any profession where you'd be safe from that kind of thing, it would be that. Do you think that there is perhaps a incumbency on politicians to try and moderate their language when feelings clearly are running very high at the minute?
I think that the thing is, I came into the whole role because I have a small business, so I'm a business champion, and I felt that actually small businesses were hardly being listened to within government. And it's very different when you walk. You've been in the NHS, you've just said, so when you walk the walk, you can actually talk the talk. You know how hard it is. So on that front, that's probably why I came into it. On the second front, this has been going on a long time. Social media plays a great part because you see it more. We have cameras watching all day long. But even when I was a councillor, I'd sit there and I was, commenting, shame on you, from local councillors sitting next to me who were in the opposition. We saw it, unfortunately, with Esther. Lynch, I'm not going to use the word, vile word, unnecessary, from the opposition. A plague on all our houses, none of us are perfect. Should we temper it? Absolutely. Can we do better? Of course we can. And hopefully we will. But people are very upset and they want to get the vote done. They voted for something and they want it delivered. Passions are high. This is very, very important.
Do you agree with that then? I can see you're nodding along, like you were talking about the fact that we can all do better.
We do, and I think MPs need to be mindful that the world is watching, so I would encourage members to consider moderating their language. It's a very emotive topic. We're looking at the future of our country, the role of the judiciary, we're looking at how we depart from the EU, so they're very emotive subjects.
And how about Boris Johnson as well, and number 10?
I would defend his position on the Surrender Act because we are essentially surrendering our position to Brussels, so I can understand why he is using that sort of language, but I would encourage the opposition benches to consider some of the language they are using. It's important that we do have respectful debate. You can do that by putting straight talking language, and we shouldn't confuse the two because I do appreciate the general public is feeling very frustrated and MPs are representing their constituents, so we shouldn't stifle debate, but I think we can do it in a more constructive and respectful manner.
And there's also a big difference, I think, between a valid term such as surrender and actually language that is violent by nature. So talking about knifing people on the front, talking about lynching people, talking about civil disobedience, which we've seen David Lammy talk about the last few days. I do think
and
that...
some anonymous Conservative ministers as well, I should say. It's not all, on the opposition
But this
side.
is one of the challenges why I think the anonymity needs to almost end. If people want to use offensive language, inappropriate language, they need to own up to it. Because if they're being anonymous, it's because they know their language isn't okay. So ultimately, we all need to have more respect. We need to
there
end
was the
division.
language around Theresa May, I suppose, as well, wasn't there? Often anonymous.
Also, isn't it a case of filibustering because actually you haven't got much to say? So, calling the word Surrender Act inappropriate. OK, well, what should we give up Act? Is that what we want to call it? What do you want to call it?
The Ben Act, that's its name.
Yeah, Ben Act.
Could use that.
Yeah, but I mean, the fact is that it isn't really the case. I mean, it was hardly a battle plan with what they've delivered, the way to to go forward. The Ben Act, it has made it so difficult that people are frustrated, and we are at the brunt of that, of course.
I'm keen to talk a bit about some of the points that David Gauke just raised in the interview before. You know, he is clearly someone who is concerned about the direction of the Conservative Party. He doesn't think that it's in an election-winning position unless it goes to the centre ground. He's obviously worried about some of those seats, you know, in the south. Do you think he's got a point?
I recognise some of the aspects that he raises, but equally I think the Conservative Party is very united. Certainly since we've had a new Prime Minister, we've really focused our determination on getting a deal.
Well, not really in Westminster if 21 have been kicked out.
Potentially, but the Prime Minister is coming back next week, we understand, with more details on the alternative arrangement. Will hopefully negate the need for the backstop. So I do feel as though the party is very united in our commitment to upholding the referendum vote, committed in our aspirations for the Conservative Party and our domestic agenda, which we want to deliver, which is why the Prime Minister has really clearly stood on that he wants a general election so we can legislate and get acts through Parliament to ensure that we do deliver in the national interest.
Do you think that the Conservative Party needs to win from the centre?
So I think I have a real issue with this concept that we're kicking out the moderates. It just isn't true, and I think it is, unfortunately, an untruth. What's happened is that a group of MPs who might have broken the whip for the first time ever voted to give power to the opposition so that the opposition could instruct the government on what it can and can't do. That is something we cannot have, and unfortunately discipline did fall apart under Theresa May, so we do need to bring back discipline, but it's not a kicking out of the moderates. And David Gauke will be here at conference, he's speaking. Contrast that to Luciana Berger, who went to her own conference when she was a Labour Party member.
Well, she decided to quit, didn't she? It's a
Well,
bit
no,
different.
she did.
She chose to resign.
But I think it's the treatment that's different. So David Gauke will come here over the next few days, and there might be people that want to debate with him what he did and didn't do.
She chose to resign because, I mean,
I understand.
She
would also feel that she was effectively forced out, constructively dismissed. But she did. She wasn't. Exactly.
I agreed on that point, but that is, you know.
No, I take the point.
Yeah, you know, I think we have to be careful that running vein that we've seen. See, we're very polite, aren't we? We're not using the word anti-Semitism. We're not going down these roads because Conservative by name and nature. But where we are today, the reason that it's so hot is because people want this Brexit delivered.
Just a very quick thought, because we're out of time, but I'm interested in your experience in the seat that you're in. Obviously, you know, quite a Labour-leaning vote. You have to kind of really try and win voters over to the Conservatives, I'd imagine, if you're going to win there.
It's a beautiful seat.
Yeah, I've been, actually. Yeah.
I love it. Yes.
Where does the Conservative Party need to be if it's going to win seats like the one you're fighting? Is it a risk that you are, as some would say, going too far down the Brexit route, too far down the Nigel Farage route? Do you need to come back more into
I'm not down the Brexit route. I voted to remain. I'm holding up the vote.
Where do you think the Conservative Party needs to be?
I think it should be where it is at the moment. So we cannot have private schools altered or changed in any way, shape or form. They are a great resources. I believe in levelling up. I believe we've had Matt Hancock on about the hospital. Talk what we're selling. Go back to the streets. Tell people what we're delivering. That's what they want to hear. In my particular area, it's potholes. It's about being tidy. It's about small businesses. It's those sort of things. It hasn't changed. But if you take away faith schools, grammar schools, academies, private schools, good grief. I mean, it's just unacceptable. And that's where we are.
Thank you very much for coming on and giving your opinions ahead of a very busy conference.